generally the process of the assessment, right? So we'll discuss more about assessment in the next presentation as well. So the process of assessment will begin with a referral, right? So referral will be there. Who has referred a person or a client, we can say, for counseling. Okay. And then we can ask few referral questions, right, from the assessor about the assessee, right? So assessor will ask, assessor, who is the assessor? Who will do the assessment on the client, the assessee. Okay. Or we can say the candidate is the assessee and the assessor will be the HR. Okay. So the HR or the assessor. So here, see, the scenario is that there is a client, right? And someone has referred. So the referral and all those things are coming. But if we take into the recruitment scenario, in that case, there will be the HR and the candidate. Okay. So the HR, so again, this step might not be there, right? So they'll be preparing a general assessment for all the candidates. So specific assessments will not be there, but specific assessment for specific tests, right? That will be there. So the assessor may meet the assessee or others before the formal assessment in order to clarify aspects of the reason for the referral, right? So these are for if there is like a counseling one-to-one session kind of a thing, right? Like for that. Otherwise, these steps will not be there. The HR, we can say, or the assessor prepares the tools for assessment. So there will be different tools for measuring, right? Different, one tool can be for the personality, the aptitude, the skills, the IQ, right? And all of those. So as per the requirement, as per the scenario, which we discussed in the last class, right? So there were case studies, right? And as per the requirement, we'll use different tool. Fine. So in some we discussed about the employee satisfaction. In some we discussed about the intelligence can also be measured if it's recruitment, right? Then for the turnover, we can also see how much they are engaged or right, what exactly their personality is, the type. Fine. So the tools will be identified, that which tool we are going to use for a certain scenario, right? As per the discussed case studies last week. So after the assessment, the assessor writes a report of the findings that is designed to answer the referral question. So again, see, it will be, the reports will be more in description when it's a client, when he has been referred and right, for counseling. Otherwise, it will be there, right? But will not be so much in detail because you don't have to submit it to that client, right? So it will be, right, you definitely, like if it's the candidate, fine, you definitely can submit that report to the person so that the candidate knows about, like if you have taken the personality test, you can share it with the person, right? And you can be very much clear that if the person is not selected on the basis of that test, right? So you can make that person know as well. That's perfectly fine, right? So giving the feedback, whether, right, if there is a scope of improvement or if he's not a good fit, right? So making that clear, that clarity is also important. So we can definitely do that. Fine. And yes, feedback sessions, again, that would be required if it's for the recruitment. Otherwise, right? Otherwise, we definitely need that report. If it's not, report will be required for recruitment as well. But for other other scenarios, other case studies, other issues, other problems, right? We will have the report with us and then we'll discuss it one-to-one. We can discuss it so for the low performing employees, right, we'll have the report and then we'll discuss with them that these are the areas, right? And they'll also get the insight, fine, after that feedback, and that will be the, right, that is how they are going to improve themselves and that is how it will benefit, right? So it's the referral here the assessment like is the referral is there, then there is a client, and then there is the assessor. Fine. So yes, this is again showing the same thing, that there will be this referral, and then you will classify, right, by asking the questions, the client, prepare the tools, and then assess, right, the assessee, and prepare the report. Fine. So this is for that. Right. So the tools of psychological assessment. So first is the test, right? So if you have to assess someone, so first is the test which you are going to use. What exactly is the test? It may be defined as a measuring device or procedure. So the terms psychological test refers to a device or procedure, right? So we'll call it as a device procedure designed to measure variables related to the psychology. Okay. Now, various important aspects are, first is the content. So which is the subject matter of the test, which will vary with the focus of the particular test, right? So intelligence test, the IQ test will be different, and the purpose will be different. The content will be different, right? The personality test will have different content. Correct. And based on that, the aptitude test will have different content. Fine. So different test developers start the test development process with different theoretical orientations. Then comes the format. So format refers to the form in which a test is administered. Then the aspect is, the next is the test administration. So it can be one-on-one or group administration can also be there, right? So few tests will require to be interactive, where you'll be asking questions, right? And then the person, the candidate, the assessee will be, right, answering you. Or it can be group test as well. Fine, where you have given the test, right, in a group, and then they are forming the same. Then comes the scoring and interpretation. So it is the process of assigning such evaluative codes or statements to the performance on the test, right? So we will be doing the practicals, and then we'll see each, right, that what is the content, what exactly is the format being used, and whether each test, like, so we'll discuss specifically that test will be one-to-one, or it can be done in a group, how the scoring and interpretation, definitely that we'll also discuss, right? So here the codes or statement to the performance and test, task, interviews, or the other behavior samples, right? So there can be a cutoff score as well. Now comes the technical quality, which is the how sound that particular test is. So it refers to how consistent and how accurately. So we have discussed it a bit right before as well. So psychological tests measure what it purpose to measure. Now the utility. So it refers to the usefulness or practical value that a test or other tools of assessment has for a particular purpose, right? So we are conducting any test. We'll not do, right, all the tests which we have, right, just for the sake of it. No. So we need to find that need should be there, right? Then only it will be purposeful, right? So it should be useful. The test should be useful if you conduct the same. So it was first the tools, right? So there can be a test. Second can be the interview, right? So here we are trying to assess the candidate, right? Behavioral psychology. So we can also, like, while we do the technical interview as well, we will try to understand the knowledge of the candidate, fine. But we also judge the suspect, right? The personality, we also try to assess that as well during the interview. So it's a method of gathering information through direct communication involving reciprocal exchange. Fine. So we understand that interview will be face-to-face interaction, right? It can be online, it can be offline, but here both the parties will interact, right? So it can be face-to-face, taking note of both verbal and non-verbal content. So we can see if it's face-to-face, then we can, the verbal is definitely clear, and we can also observe the non-verbal, right, behavior of the individual. But when it's telephonic, right, so yes, we definitely needs to concentrate that how the person's tone is, the pitch is he like, do we find him like from the tone, is he excited, is he nervous, right? So that we'll get to know from the tone, the pitch, right, how like the pauses the person is taking. Okay, so all that will also be observed. Then the panel interview can also be there. The body language, again, it will take care of the verbal, the non-verbal content as well. So here in a panel, how is it different from a face-to-face? You must be knowing it, right? You must have faced it as well. So here more than one interviewer participates in the assessment, right? Then comes the next one, which is the portfolio. Right. So portfolio can be a sample of your work product retained on paper, canvas, film, audios, etc. Right. So this can also be a tool, right, of evaluation. So technical as well, and right, that how creative the person is and other things. Next is the case history data. So it refers to the records, the transcripts, and other accounts in written, pictorial, or other forms that preserve archival information, official and informal accounts, and other data and items relevant to an SSC, right? So any historical, like any case history, we can go through that as well, right, to know more about the individual's past and current adjustment, right? So this we can do, like in case we want to promote someone, promotions, in case of promotions, right? We can go through the personal files of that employee, right, to understand more about how he's working and the behavioral, like has he faced any behavioral issues in the past? So we can go through all that, right? So has he got any appreciation letter, right? So there was, has he got the employee of the month? So all those things, right? So it will also help us know. So this is for the existing employee, right? Then behavioral observation. So it is the monitoring of the actions of others or oneself by visual or electronic means while recording quantitative, qualitative information regarding those actions, right? So the behavioral observation, behavior can be observed. So someone is there for the interview, okay, and sitting, waiting in the waiting area, right? So you can just observe the behavior of those candidates, right? So you will get to know that whether they are nervous from their body language, whether they are feeling from the hair, they are, right? All those will show you, right, about whether the candidate is nervous or not, right? So that is also one thing. So through the behavioral observation, right? So it again can be done by electronic means, or you can also get it recorded, and then, right, you can see those videos and observe the behavior. Role play test, right? So this role play test actually, it can again happen whenever you want to see that how that individual perform, how any individual perform, or how he will perform, right, in any future role, or how he can perform in a real work scenario, right? So in that case, so role plays test actually will tell you that, okay, one example here can be very simple one, that the person can be, the employee can enact as the salesperson, right? If he is in sales, and the other person, the other employee will enact as the customer. And then there can be a scenario, right? So you must be understanding this, because I guess you must have encountered, or you must have used this role play as well somewhere. Okay, so here how the person is, right, interacting and all. So this will also give us some insights. So it's a tool of assessment wherein assessors are directed to act as if they were in a particular situation, and it will be again depending upon what exactly we want to assess, right? What do we want to? So we can give particular situation related to that, right? So if it's a quite stressful situation, how the person is saying, how the person is interacting, and how the person is dealing, right? So it will help us know the behavior. Then role play is used extensively in situation where it is too time consuming, too expensive, or simply too inconvenient to assess in a real situation, right? So yes, again, role plays definitely gives us that insight, and it's a good learning, right, as well for the person, for that particular person who is doing that role play as well, right? Then computer as a tool can be there. So nowadays, as we have many, and we will also do many tests, right, which will be online, because the hard copies we cannot use. So yes, we'll be using Google Sheets and all as well, but they will be majorly we'll do those tests which will be online, right? So computers can serve as test administrators and as highly efficient test scores. So there are few tests which will give you the scores as well at the end, and then we'll discuss about that. Then interpretative report consists of numerical and narrative or narrative interpretive statements, right? So we'll go through many such tests, and there will be this interpretation will also be there, fine, about that particular test, that this is based on this theory, okay, and there were like this many components in this, right? So it will give all that explanation, right? So that is the interpretive report. Then the consultative report will consist of expert opinion. So here what happens, it will be from the expert, right? So the person, the assessor, right, who has conducted this, can give the opinion based on the test. Okay, so there will be the remarks, the results, right, with the opinion of the expert, right, concerning analysis of the data. So again, it depends on what was the issue based on that. Then integrative data, which will employ previously collected data, right? So we have collected various data, and based on that, we have prepared that, we have integrated that report. And other tools can be biofeedback, which is sometimes used to obtain measures of bodily reaction to various sorts of stimuli, but that will be, you can say, advanced one. Okay, then who all will be involved? Fine. So in this assessment process, so and see after this slides, right, we'll be doing a few tests today. So will you be able to do, because see, as it's the complete session is on tests only, right? So I expect you that you are ready and you have the time, because we understand that if you are not concentrating on the test, then the results will, right, not be accurate, right? So that is one thing, right? Because I'll not be explaining you the test, that will not be the way. I'll be asking you to do it, fine. So we'll do it and then we'll understand the test. Because if once you do it, you'll know that how much time it's going to take, and what all questions, what type of questions will be there. Okay. All right. So different parties will be involved in the assessment process. So first is the test developer. So the test developer and publishers create tests or other methods of assessments, right? So there are new psychological tests that are developed each year, right? So there are so many tests nowadays. Some tests are created for specific research study, some for publication, some for modification of the existing tests. So they are aware about the significant impact that test results can have on people's lives. Yes. So if it's, let's say, if it's the intelligence test only, okay, and the result is showing, giving a particular result, right? So if it's not correct, it's definitely affecting that person. And if we talk about the students, right? So there again, if someone guides them based on these assessments, fine, and that this is the area, this is the career where which you should pursue, and the test is not accurate, fine, it's going to impact the person, fine. So it's actually a responsibility, right, while of the test developer as well. So test developer holds this responsibility that the test needs to be, right, published after a lot of research, and they're aware about the significant impact that test results can have on people's life. Hence, a number of professional organizations have published standards of ethical behavior that specifically addresses aspects of responsible test development and use, which is important. Then this is the first party who will be developing the test, right? So obviously we'll get the test which will be ready for us to use, which we can purchase as well. So then comes the test user. So test user, who are the test user? Like we can say we are the test user. Psychological tests and assessments are used by clinicians, counselors, school psychologists, human resource personnel, consumer psychologist, experimental psychologist, and social psychologist, right? So we'll come under, we can say the HR person, yeah? Right, so learning as you also want to go into HR and all, so yes. The test taker. So someone will make the test and then someone will use it, and then comes the taker. So anyone who is the subject of an assessment, right, or an evaluation can be test taker or the assessee. So for HR, who all will be the assessee? The employees, the candidates who all appear for the interview, right? So there can be a psychological, see again, this we will not require, but still let's understand this, the autopsy, right, defined as a reconstruction of a diseased individual psychological profile on the basis of archival records, artifacts, and interviews previously conducted with a deceased assessee on people who knew him or her, right? So someone is no more, still we can have the psychological profile of that individual. Fine, so something which is beyond, right, our practice. Fine, so we'll not be doing this one. Then society at large. So next is the society at large. So how the society is involved. As society evolves and as the need to measure different psychological variable emerges, test developer respond by devising new tests, right? So as everything evolves, right? So it's a changing world. It keeps on changing, right? It's a volatile, changing world, right? And everything keeps on changing, right? So society also evolves. And based on that, definitely the test developer, right, devise new tests. Other parties can be the organizations, companies, government agencies who sponsor the development of tests for various reasons, right? Because again, developing test will be costly affair, right? It needs a lot of time and money as well. So companies offer test scoring and interpretation services. People involved in the marketing and sales of the test. So all those will also be involved, right? Then all those who are reviewing the test and evaluating their psychometric soundness. So these will come under the other parties, right? So altogether will be the different like stakeholders when we talk about the psychometric test. Right, so this part we have discussed, but let's see this again. So types of assessment setting where we can use, right, all these assessments. So first is the educational settings. Yes. To identify children who may have special needs, right? And in France, this was the reason why, right? Scientist Bennett, right? So he devised this, psychologist Bennett, right? So achievement test to evaluate accomplishment or the degree of learning. And they can be diagnostic tests are used to help narrow down and identify areas of deficit to be targeted for intervention, right? So areas where the person, the child, yeah. So education setting, the child needs to work, right? So that areas, all those areas, any special need if the kid is having. Informal evaluation, which will tell us, which is a non-systematic assessment done by teachers, lead to the formation of an opinion or attitude, right? So that can also be done in a non-informal setting, in a educational setting, right? Then comes, next is clinical setting. So clinical setting can be in the clinic, as the name says. So tests and assessments are widely used in clinical setting. It can be public, private, military, hospitals, inpatient, outpatient clinics, private practice, consulting room, etc. Right. And then, yes, counseling setting. Right. So your college must have a counselor as well. Right. So at schools, prisons, government or privately owned institutions, they will be, right, the counseling setting. So based on these assessment, we can counsel, right, at different institutions. So the aim of assessment, now why are we doing it for counseling? In counseling setting is the improvement of the SSC in terms of adjustment. So productivity or some related variables, right? So counseling setting can also be, we can also include the work, right? The workplace here as well. All right. And then the next setting is geriatric setting, where the older individual, right, will require some psychological assessment to evaluate their cognitive, any psychological, adaptive, or other functioning. And quality of life or of older individual is assessed, which are variable related to perceived stress, loneliness, sources of satisfaction, personal values, quality of living condition, quality of friendship, other social support. And screening for cognitive decline like dementia is common among older individuals, right? So here we will be more, right, we'll see, and different counseling setting and the education settings. So that is something which will be related to us, right? So business, yes, the one, yes, can be the business setting as well. So business and military setting, a wide range of achievement, aptitude, interest, motivational, and other tests may be employed in the decision to hire, as in related decision regarding promotions, transfer, job satisfaction, and eligibility for further training, right? So we can have a wide range of all these tests which we can do. Then governmental or organizational, right, for licensing, any certification, all that can also be there. Then academic research setting, conducting any sort of research typically entails measurement of some kind, and any academician whoever hopes to publish research should have a sound knowledge of the assessment. Other settings can be measurement may play an important role in program evaluation, whether it is large-scale government program or a small-scale privately funded one. And so in all these conditions, in all these settings, we can have different kinds of assessment based on the needs. All right. And then what are the different types of psychological tests for the workplace, right? So we can have different types of tests as per the Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology. Biographical, data instruments, which often seek information on a candidate's leadership, teamwork skills, interpersonal skills, extraversion, creativity, right? So all that will be measured through the use of questions about education, training, work experience, and interest to predict success on the job. Right. Some biographical data instrument also ask about an individual's attitude, personal assessment of skills, and personality. So this will be the biographical data. Then comes the cognitive ability. So cognitive ability is the aptitude test actually, which will measure the mental skills. So which typically use questions or problems to measure a candidate's ability to learn quickly, use logic, can the person reason, right? Read the comprehension, other mental abilities, right? So I'll also show you a few of these, the samples and the link also I'll share after the presentation. So, and other mental abilities that are important for success in many different jobs. So these tests assess a person's aptitude or potential to solve job-related problems by providing information about their mental ability. So this cognitive ability, as the name says, cognitive, right? So it's checking the mental skills of the individual. Then comes the personality test, right? So which will measure an individual's whether the person is extraversion, right? Consciousness, open to new experiences, optimism, agreeableness. Right? So these are few from the big five. And yes, service orientation, stress tolerance, emotional stability, and initiative or proactivity. Right? So different personality tests will have different measures actually, which we'll discuss, right? Once we do it, right? So we'll also go through 3-4 personality tests, and we'll try to understand that what are the different components in each test. So personality tests typically measure traits related to behavior at work, interpersonal interactions, and satisfaction with different aspects of work. So all these tests for the workplace may go by various names, and some tests may combine elements from one or more or above listed types of tests. Right? So there, yes, can be few tests which can include one or more elements from the above. But most types of psychological assessment or types of workplace assessment fall into all these categories only. Right. So regardless of the type of psychological test a small business uses in the workplace, the key is using an instrument that helps the firm find the candidate who best fit the organization structure and culture. Right. So as for the different scenarios, and yes, definitely recruitment is the first one. And these tests definitely can help the organization, the HR, to find that perfect fit. The types of psychological tests for the workplace may vary, but the key is understanding what type of workplace assessment is best for your business, right? So whether you use a biographical data, cognitive ability, or personality test, or an instrument that combines these elements using the right psychology test can help you hire or promote the right candidate and avoid the disaster of bringing aboard the wrong kind of employee who can easily underperform and even damage morale at your firm, right? So definitely we want to hire the right candidate, but more than that, we don't want to hire wrong, right? We don't want to do a wrong hiring because that is more of a cost to the company, right? The person will not perform, he'll not stay in the organization for a long time, he'll not be productive, right? So that is, we can say, that will cost the organization more. So hiring the right will be the key, and all these tests can help, right? So again, that's why there will be some repetition again, right? So still, but I want to do it. So what and why to assess, we have discussed it, but still as for this presentation, so a psychometric test is a standard and scientific method that plays an equally significant role in educational clinical settings, right? So it also offers an unbiased evaluation of a broad range of parameters, such as logical reasoning, industry-specific aptitude, role-specific qualities, types of personality, and more. So it can be used, as we have discussed in between and many times, right? So it can be used extensively in recruitment and selection, yes. Then performance evaluation, employee engagement, then employee training and development, definitely, for career guidance, high potential identification, whether we can promote that individual, whether this person is a good fit for succession planning. Yes, so that is, so all these are the different areas where definitely we can use the psychometric assessment. Yes, the case studies will not be there. Yes, Gausalya, I remember. The case studies which I shared, right, the problem statements. So I have added that. It will not be there in the presentation. Okay, so all that will not be there. You remember in the last class, I showed you few, case studies. So that will be fine, right? Those were the general thing, right? So the prominent reason organizations prefer using psychometric test in recruitment is that there is a strong correlation between psychometric test scores and job performance. So psychometric tests are an objective way of assessing the potential ability of candidates for various job roles. So with these tests comes the convenience of evaluating various skills ranging from levels of knowledge, aptitude, cognitive skills to behavioral qualities and people skills, right? So every job will require one or the other skill, right? And might be all of them, few jobs will require, but how much of one quality, right? So that is something. So that is something which will be evaluated through all these assessments, right? So again, the same which we discussed, that it must be objective, accurate, right? And it should not be too lengthy. Validity and reliability as well, we have discussed. Fine.